Love Radio.
On this episode, Missy and I are talking about the love languages.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Everyone, to another episode of On Finding Peace. This is the podcast where Missy and I talk about everyday practical tips that can help us to find our inner peace and to live a life of happiness regardless of what's going on with our lives. So Missy, how you doing? I know it's February when we're doing this, and it's been a bit since we've done this.
I
Um,
know. I feel like it's been forever. It's
I
been
know.
it's been since last year, really. So
Technically, yes. It was last year. Just thankfully, last year just means a few weeks ago. But
yeah,
yes, it has been since last year, and we're in a whole new year, and having high hopes for this year versus the last couple.
yeah.
Um, but then again, I had those high hopes for last year too. But anyways, so how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, no complaints. Life has been treating us really well, and we've been very active this year. So, family events and birthday parties, and so life really just hasn't stopped. It's just been very rewarding. Yeah. How about yourself?
Um, Same. Been really busy and enjoying the grandkids as always. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's just work seems to be um, just exploding and opportunities and all of that, and that's really why unfortunately we haven't gotten together because
I know, right?
it's
Yeah.
just been so busy that it just hasn't happened. So um, hopefully we're back on track and
Yeah.
can keep sharing what we share. But this is
Yeah.
what we talk about too, the busyness of life and how you keep your inner
Mhm.
peace and everyday life. So that's what I've been trying to work on in the midst of all the busyness, is just maintaining my one day at a time, live in the moment,
Yeah.
enjoy the moment. um so yeah.
It must
Oh,
be really good that we have this, that we have this podcast because it's funny. One of the classes that I use a workbook and I work out of every day for myself says to to have peace, you must teach it to learn it. Right.
mm,
And so that's exactly what we're doing here is, and in this case, we're going to be hopefully teaching you some things will keep you peaceful in your relationships, whether it's
yes.
children or family or loved ones, significant others, that kind of thing. So it's going to be, I think, pretty helpful.
Yes, no, I'm excited because since we are recording this in February and a few days after Valentine's Day, unfortunately,
Yeah.
um, yes, thinking that love languages and the relationships would be a apropos topic to February.
Yes. Yes. So, Chris, do you know your love languages?
I don't know, are you asking me or are you asking my wife?
I'm
Those could be
asking
two
you.
very different,
Very different responses.
yeah, very different responses. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm very much a introverted type person, and sometimes that surprises people, given what I do, for a living. But I really am more introverted, which really talks more about what's going on a person's inside. So
Mhm.
my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions are more interior than would be expressed. So I think when it comes to relationships, romantic or otherwise, I'm more of the quiet one that feels deeply, but you may not know that. unfortunately.
So the 5 love languages in my, so Dr. Gary Chapman wrote a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's physical touch, hugs, kisses, love, words of affirmation. I love you. I appreciate you. You're so kind. You look beautiful. We always like those. I mean, us words of affirmation people do. Acts of service, taking out the trash, doing the dishes, cooking, things like that. Gifts, which could be anything extravagant, like a trip, to anything small, like a Snickers bar. And
Mm-hmm.
Quality time is the final one, which is obviously just spending time with one another, and
Right.
not on your phone, or sometimes some of the quality time people that I know just want to be in the same room with you. I'm like, okay, but you're on your phone and I'm on my phone, and this isn't spending time with me, to me, but they might
Right.
have different opinions.
Right.
So anyway, so would you say of those 5, what would you say, like what serves you the most? Because we usually give love the way we like to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say that I tend to give it more as in number 4 with the gifts, just spontaneous stuff here
Nice.
and there.
Yeah.
But I also tend to 5. And going back to the introversion, yeah, skip the phones. That's if you're
Yeah.
sitting in a
Yeah.
room
Yeah.
with somebody on a phone, they're not there with you. But
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable, though, as that introvert, to say that if we're in a room together without even saying a word, I'm still feeling that
Yeah.
togetherness, and that still works.
Right. Yeah.
Where others will say, well, no, you need active dialogue. And
Yeah.
at least for me as an introvert, the mere presence of the other is fine with me. And
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be, um, the emotions don't need to be shared verbally.
Right.
Now, again, we're not both in the room on our phones. I'm not counting that. Um, so that would be more me. I
But
know
could you
others are
be
different. They want
preoccupied with other
verbal.
things? So let's say she's reading a book and you're watching football. Like, is that
Yeah,
still like serve for you? Okay.
that works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, though, both on phones doesn't. And I don't know why. I'd have to examine that. That for some reason is like you're not present. But yes, I mean, you could be reading a book or
Yeah.
whatever, and um, the fact that people are choosing to be in that same space.
Hmm.
That's where I think the relationship comes in.
Yeah.
Because you can choose to be elsewhere,
Yeah.
but you're going to choose, to join in this space.
Now, so
So,
I'm
how about you?
personally, yeah, I'm words of affirmation and acts of service. So like I love to, like, oh, let me get your dinner for you. Oh, I cooked for you, right? And I'm really not as strong in that one as I am for words of affirmation. So like telling the kids that I'm proud of them, or just expressing my love in different ways for my significant other. But I didn't know this until my marriage had failed, that my ex was physical touch. And I thought I was doing a good job, but I apparently, I'm not a physical person, but he was very physical. But I didn't realize that the way they receive love, no matter how it is, so like to
Hmm.
whatever makes their cup full, is really like, rejection in the worst form. Like, so if and I don't want to talk about my ex or anything, specifically, but like for me, if I walked into a room and was like, waiting for, accolades for the way that I looked, right? And
Hmm.
I just wait and wait and no, like my significant other is the one that I'm looking for it from. But if he doesn't say anything, then it literally could be like, oh my God, like, does he not like me? Is there something wrong? Like that mental dialogue starts. But if he was like, I don't really like that outfit on you, right? Instead of, something which he is very good at, sharing, how much he appreciates my exterior, and then my, appreciates the way that I cook for him and the things that I do. But when it's not there, it sometimes feels like the worst form of rejection for
Hmm.
that person. And so I don't like, so let's say I'm not physical. If somebody said no to sex, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'm heartbroken and you don't love me. And I'd just be like, all right, we ain't having sex, whatever, but other people, in the, hey, can you take out the trash? And then you don't take out the trash, which is an act of service.
Yep.
Then I feel like you don't love me. Right. And so I think that that's important for people to understand, one, the way that they receive love, but two, the way their partner receives it, and make an effort in trying to, ensure that their cup is full, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think this is an important topic in that sense, that it helps us to better understand ourselves and our partners.
Right.
Because I think some of the biggest things, and I don't typically do marriage or couples therapy. That's not my thing. But I have helped, people out and clients out with some relationship issues. And, one of the things that I think is one of the um, biggest issue that evolves would be the expectations.
Yeah.
That, and especially in the example you were giving, is that one party has an expectation that another party is going to do something. So when they don't, yeah, that's, a negation of, whatever. But how aware is the other person of that expectation?
Right.
And
They're
that's
usually
where,
not.
I notice exactly, and sometimes when I'm dealing, with some couples on this, very basic piece, that, I've had them say, like, well, this is the first time I've heard you say that's
Yeah.
something you would, want, like,
Yeah.
don't like, whatever.
Yeah.
So, that really shows that, I think it's very important that we um, communicate expectations, and to know what is my love language, what is yours, how do we express that, are we comfortable with each other's love languages, and what are we going to do to support each other
Right.
without the other guessing.
Sorry, there's a bug right in front of me. Yeah, but they
So
I didn't
no,
mean to
I
scratch.
was going to go somewhere, but I won't.
Want some love, want some physical love from me. Is that what cheesy peasy? Yeah, but that's I think that that's important because, like I said, that was part of the reason that I had a failed marriage. Which, and I don't say that failed because I feel very good about where I'm at in my life, and I still have a very good relationship with my ex. However, that was not something that I understood. Like you said, I didn't know that expectation was there. And, I obviously, he didn't know that expectation was there for me either. So those are like, I wasn't even aware of what a love language was, is what I'm getting
Right.
at,
Yeah.
and, now I'm in a relationship where I swear to God, he has all of the love languages. Like he just gives it all. And I'm the same way. Like, I just love to, pamper and love and take care of. And, some people might call it mothering, but I don't. So I just, but I do it to my kids as well as I do it to him, because I want him to know that, I appreciate him, and to, it's just in my nature to be the space that people can just relax and have fun and be in enjoyment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just really encourage people to learn these love languages, and to have these conversations.
Yeah.
um because unfortunately, in many relationships, when things start to go wrong in the relationship, one of the first things that stops is communication.
Right.
And it's the communication that is needed, well, all throughout, but definitely as things are maybe getting tense or starting to fall apart, you need that communication even more. But yet we tend to pull away at that point and stop communication. And then it's only going to get worse because, again, you're going to have these expectations that are never verbalized, and as such are never going to be met. And then that just helps the other to say, well, see, I was right all along.
Yeah.
Um, you know, when in reality, maybe you're not. If the other knew,
Mhm.
it could be a whole different story.
So, and I also want to point out that I don't know about men, I don't know about anybody else on this planet. I can only assume, but we have a tendency to make things up, right?
Hmm.
Like, who knows? Does somebody not love you just because they didn't open your car door? No, that's not necessarily the case, right? And sometimes that inner dialogue that you have is your worst enemy, right? And it was kind of funny because I was on the phone with my biological father this morning, and he said something to the effect of, he was talking to my stepmom, and he said, she said something and it was like negative, and he was like, I didn't want to tell her it was all in her head. And I was like, yeah, that's a bad idea on any front. You don't do that to women. You just don't. Like, but that's the truth. The truth is that 9 times out of 10, we can't remain neutral about any experience that we're having. And the point of being an observer of that, just being an observer of the things that you're thinking, can really help shift you from
Hmm.
from what did somebody say, love-based thinking to fear-based thinking, from fear-based thinking, right?
Yep.
And like you say, healthy and unhealthy, right? It's the same thing. It's that it's polarity, and we always want to shift, and I'm a firm believer, and you can love somebody every day for the rest of your life, even if you're not with them, or
Hmm.
you can have that kind of relationship that still has growth without being with a person, and so whether
Hmm.
that's my parents, my sisters, my siblings, my best friends, around the world, or who's in my immediate household every single day. I always want to have that growth mentality. And so I've really come a long way from finding neutrality in the things and the way other people behave, in making up things about how it how I take it personally, really,
Hmm.
and how I react to it, because your response is really your responsibility. That's the only thing that you can't control
Yeah.
other people, but your
Nope.
responsibility is how you respond to it.
Yep. And we can control our thoughts. And I totally agree with you. There is a famous person, Dr. Judith Beck, and she was giving a conference, and I still remember this quote of everything she said. This day long conference, one sentence. Um, but she said, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true.
Oh, amen to that, for sure.
Yep. And that's why I still remember that one sentence out of
Yep.
an entire day's conference,
Yeah.
because that is where we mess ourselves up. That we
Hmm.
have these thoughts, we believe these thoughts, because I think most of us look at these thoughts as exterior, to us, a thought's coming in because of something factual.
Hmm.
But in reality, our thoughts are generated by us. We
Hmm.
create our thoughts.
Yeah.
Just like we have control over our actions, we have control over then our responsibilities, our consequences, however you want to,
Yeah.
put it. So you're right. I mean, thinking that somebody doesn't love me because of something they did or didn't do, when in reality, they didn't know they were supposed to or not supposed to do something.
Right.
But because we think that, of course, that's going to be true. And I've even heard people within arguments, where the one party is saying, no, that's not what I meant at all. And the other one is
Right.
saying, well, no, I know it is.
Right. Right. Right.
Even despite the fact the person is saying, honestly, not at all what I
That's
meant.
totally not it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
But
I
because
like
we
to.
originally thought it, we believe that.
Yeah.
Well, that had to
Yeah.
have been because I thought it.
Well, that's the buy-in, right? That's the buy-in, because thoughts go through our head all day long. And I like to say, oh, when you take that certain one, and you believe, like you invite it in, you're like, oh, well, let me analyze this. Where did that come from? Why do I feel this way? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You end up in a loop, right? And then as soon as you
Yep.
get worse and worse in that loop, you're literally spiraling downwards. right? And so that's, you've invited it in, you've decided to live with it. Now it's a belief rather than just like, oh, that was an interesting thought. Wonder where that came from, and let it disappear like a wisp of smoke. You know, you don't even have to say what I just said. When you see it, you just go, okay. And then that's it. I mean, and this is everything from looking in the mirror to the way that you see yourself, to the experiences you have, to the circumstances you're in, to the people you're around. I mean, like, you can really apply that everywhere. And like, when I started to do this, I noticed I was judgmental, mostly to myself, but also exterior. And now I don't feel like I'm in that space anymore. It's like sometimes I'll have people say, you know, XYZ happened with, you know, so-and-so. And I'll be like, oh, well, you know, I'm sure they'll figure their way out of that, you know, and I believe in them, you know, and they're like, but they've done it 20 times. And I'm like, you still don't, it's not my business. Two, I don't want to condemn them. And because guess what? That's attack. And to me, that's not possible, because in my version of this world, I know that I'm one with them. I know that they have the same God spirit running through them that I have. And so I don't want to attack them, because that means I'm also attacking me. And that doesn't teach anyone anything, except for that's possible. Right. And that's really what the foundation of this world is going on right now. Like, that is our foundation right now.
Yeah. And actually, that probably wouldn't be a bad topic for a podcast, is how to maneuver today's society, you know, and kind of escape it safely, in a sense, because we have lacked a sense of honest communication that leads to something productive. And I've always liked, and I know it's attributed to Reagan. I don't know if he was the first one to say this, but the whole thing about trust but verify. And I think that helps in communication. You know, that when you're dealing with, especially your partner, but this could be anybody, and you have those situations where you have an expectation, it wasn't met. You now have the thought, you don't love me. This is where I think we need to trust but verify. So I can trust me that maybe I have pretty good sense on other people.
Right.
But let's verify this. You know,
Yeah.
so what stops us from going to our partner and not accusing? And this is where I versus you language comes in. But use the I, that I feel unloved when this happened.
Right.
You know, so you're sharing that to give them an opportunity. I'm not judging it, just saying this is how I felt. I felt unloved. To let the other person, hopefully in a similar way of communication, to be able to say, this is what I meant.
Right. You know, it's
and then
really
begin to
funny.
hash that out.
I love that you've brought this up, because it's I think very important in relationships, that people add to your happiness, not be the source of it. Right. And so I have found in the current relationship that I'm in, you know, I might get triggered by something, and he'll notice right away. He's a very intuitive man, and he'll notice and be like, what's wrong? And I'll be like, nothing, just, I need a few minutes. And he'll be like, okay. And so then I'll go and I'll be like, what triggered me? Why did that trigger me? And then I'll have the opportunity to, instead of reacting, like, I'll think it through. And then I have the opportunity to come back to him and say, I felt unloved, but you didn't do it. There was nothing you did. It was the sense of the word. It was whatever it was. Right. But, and he'll go like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, you didn't do anything. You were just being you. Like, and that's perfect that you showed me that. And I appreciate that, because now I know that there's still healing for me to do. Right. I don't ever expect him to apologize, or, you know, I mean, it's always nice when we have that conversation and we're on the same page. And at the same time, like, I got to take that responsibility as well, to look inside and see, why did that trigger me? Not, it's his fault. Like, that's blame. That's the blame game. Nobody likes that. So I love the I versus you language there.
hmm Yeah, no, I think that's important because if we examine our conversations, many of us use the you in conversations way more than we
Hmm.
probably should be.
Right.
Um, so we don't want to be accusatory, especially if somebody didn't know the expectation.
Yeah.
You know, now I think it's different if you've expressed a certain, expectation, a certain desire, and it's always given the opposite. Um, well, that's something else to examine.
Yeah.
But if they never knew it, to put blame somewhere, but yet that's what we do. And I think these are easy things we can communicate with our loved ones. Um, but what I've had, people say, well, that's just too difficult. I can't do that. I think that's a whole other question then.
Mm.
Why can't you have that kind of conversation with somebody who you say you're close with and it is a loved one?
Yeah.
So where's that barrier, in this relationship that you can't do that?
Right. Um, you brought up the blame and pointing the finger, and I always like to
hmm
remember that when you point the finger at somebody, you have three pointing back at you, which means it's always more you than it is them. And um, and yeah, I would totally be like whoever that person was, like if you can't have an open honesty in your relationship and communicate, what else is there?
Yeah.
What else is there to, that's my significant other is my best friend. I gotta tell him everything, good, bad, wrong, and different. Doesn't matter, because
hmm
I love him and I want to share who I am with him. And if I have to hide who I'm being, then
Yep.
that's probably not the right person for me.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, my role as a counselor or coach, isn't really to tell you who you need to be with or not be with, but I have made some suggestions that there's another way to look at this.
yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
it.
yeah, so
It's
sometimes I
it's
want to,
always great when you want somebody but don't need them. That's
yeah,
one of my favorite sayings, is that, like, that's why in my relationship he adds to the
hmm
happiness that I have, the joy that I have, the fun that I have. I mean, he adds to everything that I get to do. And
yep,
he's that safe space on a day that I'm falling apart, you know? Um, and that's nice. That's really nice to
hmm
have, a physical body to have that and love him. But if he wasn't, I could do it by myself. I know that.
yep,
You know what I mean? Because I have the love inside of me to be able to bring out and share with others no matter what.
hmm
Yeah.
and I think that is a key that people need to remember is, we don't have to be in a relationship.
No.
We can desire to be in one, we can want to be in one. That's all wonderful. Choose whomever it is you want to be in one with. But you're right that the difference of, well, I have to,
Yeah.
and if I lose this person, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Um, that's a dependence and a whole other podcast talk.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was
um,
like, that sounds like a codependency podcast.
yep, exactly, a whole other
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Um, where, yeah, if your partner uplifts you and supports you and is there for you, that's what it's all about,
Yeah.
in
It
my
is.
mind at least. I mean,
Yeah.
you know others can comment differently, and that's fine, but it
No,
shouldn't
I
be a
totally
need.
agree. And I want to make sure I mention that if you guys do want to find out what each other's love languages are, you can do this for your kids, you can do this for your significant other, you can do it for yourself. It's Gary Chapman's website is fivelovelanguages.com, and it gives you the opportunity to buy the book. He's got a book, he's got the tests that you can find out what your love language is, and extremely valuable in any relationship, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, and we'll have a link to that, in the show notes for people to click there, because it really is an important thing to do, and doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, you
No.
could do that during dinner, right after dinner. I mean,
Hmm.
we're not saying a long time, but to avoid these unmet expectations.
Hmm.
I think it's important,
And help you
you
add
know, and
value. It will really help you
yeah,
add value to your relationship. I mean, that's, I call the surface level relationships like, how's the weather? Oh, how you doing? How you been? Nothing really fruitful comes from it, but you really want to deepen those relationships, and, that will help you add value not only to yourself, but to your partner as well.
yeah. Yeah, and if you catch yourself in a relationship only doing small talk, definitely
Yeah.
look at this website. um,
Yeah.
because there are some of us, and I'm including me, who just can't stand small talk. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if that's the
Yeah.
relationship, this is going to be a very difficult relationship.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
thank you so much for your time, Chris. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening. And we love you, and happy Valentine's month, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, let's celebrate a month of love.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely appreciate all of you. And, if you like this content, please like it, share it with your friends, put comments, anything you want to hear us talk about. Please get in touch and let us know. But yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.